Hello and good afternoon to you. Welcome to another edition of Hot Issues. And my name is Alfred Okansi. I'm sitting in for your regular host, Winston Amoa. This afternoon, exactly a week ago, a section of the Togolese population said they are tired with the rule of the Nassingbeys. Almost 50-year rule of what some have described as the dynasty of the Nassingbeys. Are the concerns and demands of this group of protesters valid or not? What exactly can the sub-region body do about this? And indeed, the political and democratic future of Togo, how does it look like in the wake of this? This is what we're going to be discussing here on Hot Issues. My name is Alfred Okansi. I'll be introducing my guests right after this break. Do stay. My guest is one person who has knowledge about the happenings of some of these kinds of unrest and uprisings, especially on the African continent and indeed across the world. Dr. Vladimir Enchidanso is Director of Academic Affairs at the Ghana Armed Forces Command and Staff College. He's an international relations expert as well. Doc, it's good to have you.
Good to have you too.
I would obviously hazard guess to call you Professor because other people know you as that. So Professor Vladimir Enchidanso as well.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Now, there are many people who were surprised about what happened in Togo. But from where you sit, did it take you by surprise, or for you, it was a long time coming?
Thank you. But I wouldn't say it was long time coming. Neither would I say I was surprised at it, because in politics, and especially in conflicts of such nature, they can be spontaneous. People who want to have an uprising would choose an opportune time and try to strike. Maybe the Togolese opposition had seen that this was the time to strike and they have their goals. Normally conflicts come when there are opposing views, opposing goals. So we say conflict erupts where there is incompatibility of goals. However, even when the goals are the same, they can fight over the process. I strongly suspect that in the Togolese situation, the goal is the same, a prosperous, developing Togo. But then the way the Togolese government, incumbent government, is going about it is what the opposition doesn't like. And so they're fighting over the process. They're talking about dynasty rule. They're talking about long terms of the Nassingbeys, you know, and they think that there must be some kind of change. There must be some kind of constitutional amendments and what. So they are only fighting about the process of getting to the same goal. In that sense, I wouldn't say it came as a surprise, because anywhere you have 2 or 3 or more people deciding on a thing, there will be incompatibility of goals or the fight over the process of the goals. Secondly, it's a political thing, and politics is unpredictable, and you can at any time expect something very untoward, very silly, very stupid, you know, that kind of thing. So we expect all these in kind of conflict situations, yes.
Now, I look at it this way. Now, there are many who would want to side with the protesters and the kind of issues they were raising. 38 years of rule by Gnassingbé Eyadema. He goes off, and then in 2005, the National Assembly has his son sworn in, won an election that was characterized with a lot of violence, leading to the death of over 500 people or thereabout.
Right.
With this in mind, would you say that Togo is practicing a certain democracy that should present the outcome that should be accepted by all?
Well, to that I would say that democracy is not an event. Democracy is a process. And the process metamorphoses into some kind of another stage, and you move from there and on and on and on. America is not the kind of, or is not at the apex of democracy for which you think we should practice American democracy. Nor would you say there is a British democracy we should kind of follow. Other than that, it becomes like an event.
True.
And then he who runs better, like Usain Bolt, wins, kind of. It's not an event when you say A, B, C, D, get ready, go, you go. These kind of processes, kind of turmoils, kind of upheavals, create the necessary condition for perfecting democracy. And so what is happening in Togo cannot be described as non-democracy or democracy. The point is that they are in the process of crystallizing, cementing. We have had ours in Ghana. We had the Kumi Prekons. We had all kinds of demonstrations. People died. Now we sat down and created a constitution for ourselves.
And that's where the question is, because there is a certain constitution that has provided a certain framework of which these protesters are saying that, look, go back to the 1992 constitution, which spells out these. And so if there is a framework, which you are just saying, that these protests are supposed to fine-tune the democracy, in their case, there is a constitution that's supposed to be guided, but there's a seeming disregard for that particular constitution on which
such a tangent of argument would be very unfortunate. As I said, any jolts, any processes that people go through, bitter or palatable, are part of the processes towards making governance more acceptable. The Togolese situation you're talking about didn't come out of the blues. They had independence, there was a coup, and we have had coups in Ghana. Sure. There was a coup, Nasingbe came, 38 years he was ruling constitutionally. It's sad when people say, oh, somebody is even dictators have constitutions. They have something to guide them. So Nasingbe ruled for Yadima ruled for 38 years. His son was then, and you see, at times we must be very careful when we're trying to analyze situations.
Right.
Let me, maybe I would annoy some people, but those of us watchers, we believe in rules, regulations, international law, and things like that. The 205 situation you were talking about, we're all part of the Constitution.
They were all part of the Constitution?
Because when you say a Constitution, it is the interpretation that may be done by a victor's interpretation or, you know,
a loser's
exactly, a loser's interpretation. So what happened was that in 2005, when Ayadim had died, the speaker should have been sworn in. Absolutely. He was outside the country and started insulting the Togolese government. Of the past government, insulting that everything was bad. It's like what he was saying outside annoyed the parliament. Parliament decided to suspend him. That's constitutional. And after suspending him, they put his son there. Is it because it is his son? I'm not saying all these things are good. I'm talking to you about how things happen before things change. Because without those frictions, there can't be any change. Then the whole of West Africa stood against the process that. And then they went into another new constitutional era, which was acceptable to the international community, acceptable to ECOWAS, which intervened, and therefore that is what they are being ruled with. If they don't like it, yes, and as they don't like it, they've gone onto the street to say that we don't like it. But they can't just by the whip just say, let's go back to 1992, the very constitution that they didn't want or what. So for me, I see it as part of the process for crystallization. And maybe the methodology might be wrong, going to the street and getting killed. But then it's part of the process that will end up eventually in the future for a better constitutional
When
order.
you listen to the opposition coalition, you get the sense that they have tried other forms of engagement which hasn't really worked. And so this is their last resort. They're saying they're ready to die for this particular cause.
Fine. They will be ready to die for a constitutional cause. In America, the civil rights movement. And up till now, in the southern part of the U.S., you have this racism still raging on. By 1969, you couldn't raise your head and say you are a communist or a black man. Who are you, kind of? People will suffer. I don't say we should continue in that vein. But what happens is that whatever they have done is part of a process for Christians. He said they are prepared to die. Where do you draw the line? Everybody dying? So I believe they should sit down and know that there are two things that conflict each other if you don't take care. One is the process of a thing and the strategy. They should listen to this very carefully if they are to have a chance of listening. Process and strategy. Which triggers the other? Does the process trigger a strategy or a strategy triggers a process? Normally, when there is a process already, you design your strategies to achieve your goal. If your strategies are wrong, you don't achieve anything. If you start a strategy, but the process is wrong, you don't achieve anything. We must know this philosophical wisdom. So they just went spontaneously on the street. And I have said somewhere, I think I told one of the radio stations, that the process was wrong, the strategy wrong. They will achieve nothing. If the strategy is wrong because they just went spontaneously on the street, prepared to die. They're talking too much. People are dying. But then what is being done in Lome is not replicated. It's not a national thing to start with. The opposition itself is not seriously united. Maybe it's
about 6 of them. Who have formed this coalition.
More than 9 of them. And now that they are doing this, which is not nationally recognized, or it's not you see, in a situation like this, you start the fire from one point, it goes wild throughout the country, the government sits up and begins to dialogue. In Ghana, ours was peaceful. From 89, we worried the government because we had the international support, because that was the time the Cold War had died, and all monolithic governance system of governance were being asked to redress. And that was what helped us. Ours was peaceful demonstrations here and there, and that sort of thing. Then the government set up the National Democracy Commission, or that sort of thing. And we all took part. That crystallized in the 1992 Constitution. So you see, we set the fire. It was a spontaneous thing throughout the country, and then the government set up, dialogued with those in opposition and that kind of thing. If they don't do that, I bet you the whole thing will die out in Lome quietly, and that will be the end.
If the concerns are legitimate, and I'm going to go into the sub-regional reaction or impact either way. If the concerns of the protesters are legitimate and you question the methodology and how they're going about it, how should they go about it, especially when it appears some form of engagement has failed
Yes.
to do this?
In the first place, by what I'm saying, I'm not talking about the legitimacy or illegitimacy of their concerns. In the first place, if you go by serious constitutional discussions and serious democratic discussions, then what they are doing is illegitimate under any law. To go on the street and challenge government by throwing stones and whatnot, you are inviting the government to use the whip of state against you. So I wouldn't call it legitimate. Strategy-wise, I've said it's wrong again. What they could do is to use the constitutional order. We did in Ghana. We did. Yes, mass protests and whatnot are part of constitutional order, all right? So if they are using mass protests, they must be able to now have alliances, coalitions. We had, that was the time these non-governmental organizations, think tanks civil society organizations were springing up.
Doc, you talk about this constitutional order.
Yes.
And it is the constitutional order that the protesters are asking that it be restored. For example, the 2-term limit for a president, which was actually adopted. And I think in 2015, here in Ghana, there was an agreement of a sort.
Yes.
So why are we departing, or why is Togo departing from that constitutional order
what shows that there is a departure? Elections are not yet in. What shows there is a departure? Until you have shown that there is a departure, nobody is going to come to your aid. Nobody is going to understand you. I think they have 2 more years to go before there is elections.
Yes.
So why now? So that's why I say the timing, the strategy, what triggered off this thing, then the strategy towards it. So you may not achieve your goal at all. We have the man constitutionally has to go until 2019 or so.
Yes.
And so what are we saying now? I'm not anyway by this saying that I'm supporting Nasingbe and his rule. No, absolutely. But what I'm saying is that when we begin to make things that the government could easily tell us you are criminals, you achieve nothing.
Good point. Now, when this turned violent and bloody, Doc, the people who called for an intervention by the sub-regional body, and well, the situation is calm now, but there are suspicions that more protests could erupt in a few weeks ahead of us. What kind of intervention should ECOWAS make, bearing in mind that Nasingbe is actually the chairman of ECOWAS currently?
First, let me debunk a certain kind of thinking that because he's the chairman, the sub-regional body could not do anything because it's happening in his country. No. Decisions by the sub-regional body is not taken by the chairman. We have the ECOWAS Commission, and if the commission feels that there must be a meeting to discuss Togo, it necessarily will not have to come from the chairman. So let us not fear that If the body wants to intervene, they wouldn't intervene.
Right.
Number two, regional bodies don't interfere in situations like the Togo situation until it has reached a point where there is imminent state failure, state implosion. When there is every evidence to show that state institutions are incapable of handling the situation, and that carnage and that kind of destruction is going on, a spillage where the region would be affected. Other than that, the only thing the sub-regional body could do and other governments could do is to use the diplomatic card by either sending envoys to the place to talk to both government and opposition, by using the hotline. I bet by this time our president, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, must have called already, both to the opposition and to the government.
There was that particular call that he should make that diplomatic approach.
Absolutely, absolutely. But,
mediator of
but these calls are not made public, let me tell you, are not made public. If America is going to bomb a place, when NATO was going to bomb, when NATO was going to say, Yugoslavia, for example, last minute, the American president had to call Putin and say, hey, you know what, we're going in.
That's right.
So those hotlines, these are part of diplomatic channels that are used quietly. Even when you are sending envoys, it's not always the case that you have to publicize it, that I'm sending an envoy to come to you and talk to you and that sort of thing. That's the best that the countries around and their body could do, that is the ECOWAS could do. I hear some people say the government, because the proximity is such that we should intervene, and that people were speculating that or advocating that we should send in troops. Sorry, I beg to differ. We cannot. If we had sent troops yesterday or the day earlier, it would have been seen as an aggression. One, because the Togolese government had not invited us.
Especially when the situation had turned bloody.
Exactly, exactly.
Right.
So we have no right to send troops to intervene in any way. On whose side are we going to intervene anyway?
Dr. Vladimir Nchidanso is my guest this afternoon on Hot Issues. We're going to go for a quick break. When we do come back, the question that have been raised about the time of intervention of the sub-region, I mean, should we wait for a crackdown or a breakdown of security before the sub-regional intervention actually occurs? I'm sure this is a question we'll be finding some answers to after this break. Do stay. Welcome back to Hot Issues here on TV3. My guest is Dr. Vladimir Nchidanso, the Director of Academic Affairs at the Ghana Armed Forces Command and Staff College. Doc, now, before we went for the break, you spoke about the timing, at what time exactly the sub-region can make an intervention in a situation that turns violent in a member country. Now, if we have to wait for the internal security to have lost control, wouldn't that have been too late? Where lives would have been lost, property would have been destroyed, and the situation would have been more chaotic. Shouldn't the intervention time be more earlier than we waiting for the internal security to lose control? Oh.
It is clear, even the latest one, the responsibility to protect, when the United Nations has accepted that as a norm, preemptive, protective norms and whatnot, preventive strikes and whatnot, they are all enshrined in international law. If we know Togo is preparing to attack Ghana, all right, and we have evidence that he's preparing, we can strike Togo. It's in international law.
Right.
Prevent it. Okay, kind of. But when there is a state with all the representations and whatnot, everybody recognizes that a state statutorily, then any internal matter is for internal consumption. It's internal. There is a government in Togo, recognized in the world. If that government has not invited you to intervene, you don't. You can only intervene.
Even when the protests are against the government?
Exactly. Exactly. Because the opposition doesn't have that legal personality as a state to invite anybody. The opposition cannot invite any extra territorial kind of body to come and intervene. It is only the government. But if you stick to that also, like you were saying, there is a possibility that the government can be repressive and kill almost everybody. That is why we have the responsibility to protect, which states, inter alia, that when a state is incapable of, restoring security to its own people, then the international community has a right to step in. And we have had that in Kosovo, Serbia, we have had that in several other places, including Cote d'Ivoire quite recently. We saw that Gbagbo's government, there was no government virtually.
Absolutely.
And that is when you can intervene. The United Nations is that when it's preparing to intervene, it takes about 6 months to intervene.
6 months?
Yes. Remember when we wanted to intervene in Mali, for example, ECOWAS was going to stand by force right away. And it was almost in April when the rebels were almost close to the capital, Bamako. And we were preparing, thinking of when, and we said, oh, by September. Look, April, May, June, July, August, September, 6 months. So normally intervening like a body takes approximately about 6 months before you intervene. However, one country like France did on its own, NATO sent France, go and intervene before the havoc comes in. But that was by the invitation of the Malian government. If France went on its own, it would have been aggression, taken as an aggression. And the Malian government itself would have, and let me tell you again, when the ECOWAS wanted to intervene, you remember when there was a coup in Mali, yes. the coup that came because of the Tuareg insurrection. Right. The leader of the coup, for example, said he had not invited ECOWAS. So it's sticky, and when you want to intervene, you've got to be very careful. But like you are saying, unfortunately, that is what the international system is. And if you don't take care, you go as an aggressor, or you go and exacerbate the situation. So we wait until, yes, bad things are happening. No, Togo is imploding. It will affect us. Then the body can go in.
Now, but when you test the result, because you are very familiar with what's happening or what has happened in Togo before, because this is not the first time there's been a violent uprising, for the lack of better expression, or a challenge, because in 2005 we saw this. And how far can the opposition go if you test their resolve? And especially when there is also talk about, and this is from the opposition general secretary herself, Madam Kafui Johnson, that there is a political party in Ghana that is supporting their cause in Togo.
Number one, let me start from the latter part of your question. I haven't seen the video, I haven't heard her, but it's all over, it's trending that she has said so. It's rather very unfortunate. He's not a matured person. He's not a matured politician.
Why exactly?
You don't say this because it has serious repercussions. No individual in Ghana, not the government, not the opposition, nobody has a right to interfere in the affairs of Togo. So for her to come out openly to say there is a political party in Ghana supporting their cause has serious international implications. Why? Supposing we identify the political party now, supposing the opposition wins, then the opposition, which becomes a government tomorrow, will be supporting that particular political party also in Ghana, which will be detrimental to our political cause also in Ghana. So such utterances are very, very, very unfortunate, if not silly. So I don't know. It may be true, but why do you voice it? It may be true, but necessarily you don't have to.
Rather keep it silent.
Keep it silent. Number two, whether the opposition will succeed or not, I doubt. I may be speculative, but I think if I look at the process and the strategies, I doubt if they are going to get anywhere, because the sympathies cannot go to the opposition apart from ethnic and whatever sentiments. The international community accepts Nasingwe's government. If everything is wrong, there was a time Togo was suspended by the EU because they knew that something was going wrong. Sure. Now, if anything is going wrong, EU again could come in. So the opposition should have timed their strategies together to be in tandem with what the international community thinks about Togo. But the way they went for the slaughter, I think is a little sheepish to just go in, be slaughtered, without thinking of the next. I'm thinking, do they have a plan B, a plan C? All we hear is that we are prepared to die. Die for what? What is the cause? So, change of dynasty. That cannot be a good cause. How long has the queen ruled?
Well, but you see,
how long has the Saudi Arabia dynasty ruled?
There are many who would also question the juxtaposition of what's happening in England and what may be happening in Togo. Would you say that 50 years combined of a father and son rule appears to be a disincentive to democracy in Togo?
I don't agree.
Why?
What is democracy? Did the people make a choice? I don't believe in one person ruling forever. Now, let me put back the question to you. Supposing everything was rosy, milk and honey in Togo, and one dynasty is ruling, would there have been that thing on the street? And would you have used longevity of dynastical rule as a variable in determining whether there's democracy in Togo?
Well, obviously not.
There you are. So the thing
not.
is lying outside how long the people have ruled. The main cause, if you look at the conflict in Togo, the main reason, this is a quasi-reason. Yes, it's one of the very many variables. But the main reason is not necessarily because it is a dynastical rule. It is because of the structure of Togolese governance, where the North-South divide has not been able to merge to have national parties cutting across like we have had in Ghana. We don't have a problem with that.
Absolutely.
Where Northerners will get up and say Southerners dynastical rule or Southern or a certain group. Togo hasn't been able to solve that problem. So it lies beyond that. And again, it looks as though, yes, in all the institutions, you have a certain class of people, group of people, ethnic group, filling all institutional establishments.
True.
These are the issues, and not necessarily a group has ruled for 50 years. Other than that, the sultans in Saudi Arabia and other places would also have people to tell them that we, the other minority tribes, must also come and rule. So I'm saying, and I'm stressing, that the main problem lies outside how long the people have ruled. Of course, how long the people have ruled can bring sentiments of whatever. But that is not the main. If they are able to take Eyadema out, Nasingbe out, and Kwesi Kwame comes, then what? You know, so I believe that they have not really, and I always link this to the period, the Togolese history, from the period of the plebiscite to today.
Absolutely.
The realignment of forces have not crystallized in Togo.
And that is what you say is a fundamental
Fundamental.
issue.
That's the crux of the problem. That is the crux of the problem.
What should be the intervention or the solution, lasting solution to the problem in Togo, as you have diagnosed?
In the first place, the opposition must get together. They must avoid the ethnic kind of political parties that they have. They must work towards a national consensus in Togolese governance. They must pick the ingredients of governance in Togo, the structure and everything, and use them as variables to point to the ruling government what things have to be done. And then they will have a national support. If they don't have this, any external support that they claim they are having is also parochial. Let us assume that it is true that a political party in Ghana, KKK, is supporting them, is parochial. It is a self-serving interest. Number two, the government must know that government go, governments come. Personalities don't matter. And in this case, repressions will not work. It is about time the government went back to the opposition to dialogue. They did that previously. And I think Olympio himself, who was in Ghana some time ago, even saw the what do you call it, the basket and said, oh, this is fine, and joined the government briefing.
Absolutely.
One way or the other.
Yes, with some of his party executives being appointed as ministers.
Exactly. This is the way we should go, and gradually you thaw away those chills that make democracy not work in Togo. I don't believe in violence as a form of change, because it's a rough jolt to the constitutional order. And if you come in, the next thing you do is a reprisal kind of thing. We call it that vengeance politics. And it will stick forever in Togolese politics if they do that. Vengeance politics.
Thank you, Dr. Vladimir Chidanso. I'm very
welcome.
grateful.
Right.
Democracy goes beyond personalities. He is the Director of Economic Affairs at the Ghana Armed Forces Command and Staff College. He's been my guest this afternoon here on Hot Issues. Thank you for watching and for staying with us here on TV. To make a date with us same time next week. My name is Alfred Okansi, sitting in for your regular host, Winston Amwa. On behalf of the rest of the team, good afternoon.